Good day guys, welcome to my video. I am Mala Claude Ake, a lawyer, and today's video is going to fall under the category of corporate law. Today I'm going to be talking about mergers and acquisitions. Mergers and acquisitions. Now, many of us already know what mergers and acquisitions are. They're two different words and they tend to be used interchangeably, or they're not exactly the same. Basically, a merger is a situation where two organizations of comparatively similar strength mutually decide to come together, right, and fuse into one entity. An acquisition, on the other hand, is more like an outright purchase of one organization by another, and then subsuming the identity of the organization which was purchased into the identity of the one that did the purchasing. Of course, my explanation is not the alpha and omega of it, but it gives you an understanding. Whatever the case may be, whether what is happening is a merger or an acquisition, there are laws that govern this process in the Nigerian space. We have the Investment and Securities Act. We have the Securities Exchange Commission rules. We have the Nigerian Stock Exchange listing rules. We have the Companies and Allied Matters Act, just to name a few. But I think these ones I named are the principal legislations. We also have sector-specific laws. I'll explain what I mean by that. Let's say a merger or an acquisition were to happen within the banking sector. We have the Banking or Banks and Other Financial Institutions Act, BOFIA, which governs the banking sector or the financial sector. The regulatory agency within the banking sector is the Central Bank of Nigeria. According to the provisions of BOFIA, the CBN must give prior approval of any such merger or acquisition before the intent to merge or acquire is communicated to the SEC, because the principal laws which I listed out earlier, like the ISA and the SEC rules, make it mandatory for any intended merger or acquisition to be communicated to the SEC for approval. But sector-specific regulations require that the regulator within those industries are first informed and give their own prior approval before the SEC's approval. If it's happening in, let's say, the broadcast space, of course, the NBC, which is the Broadcast Commission, has to give their prior approval. If it's happening in the telecommunications space, the NCC has to give their prior approval. If it's happening within the insurance space, NICOM has to give its own approval. Moving on, what are the types of mergers that we have? Well, under the law, we have small mergers, we have intermediate mergers, and we have large mergers. Small mergers usually are mergers where the combined assets and turnover of the entities involved has a threshold of ₦1 billion. Intermediate mergers, on the other hand, are where the combined assets and turnover of the entities involved is between ₦1 billion and ₦5 billion. Then, a large merger is one where the combined assets and turnover of the entities involved in the merger or acquisition is over ₦5 billion. Now, remember that I said that any intended merger or acquisition must first be communicated to the SEC for approval before anything is done. Of course, the SEC looks at things like whether this merger or acquisition is going to kill competition or has the potential to create a monopoly. However, the law says that small mergers which have a threshold of 1 billion naira rather do not have to be communicated to the SEC for approval before they are carried out. So the entities to a small merger can go ahead and carry out their merger or acquisition process without pre-informing the SEC. However, at the conclusion of the merger, they have a responsibility to inform the SEC of the conclusion of their merger. Now, I will go ahead and mention some other types of mergers. We have what you could call the horizontal merger, we have the vertical merger, and we have the conglomerate merger. The horizontal merger is the kind of merger you find that occurs usually between two competitors. So two companies or organizations that operate within the exact same sector and occupy the same niche within that sector, because not all organizations within a sector occupy the same niche. So let's say two companies that both produce tissue paper, right? Choosing to merge. That is a horizontal merger. A vertical merger is where you have two or more organizations within a sector, but they don't occupy the same niche within that value chain. So I'll give you an example. Let's say the oil and gas sector. You have a company that is into prospecting for oil and gas, and a company that's into refining crude. They're in the same oil and gas sector, but they don't occupy the same niche within the value chain of oil and gas. That merger is considered a vertical merger. Then we have the conglomerate merger, where you have two or more organizations that are in disparate sectors, not even operating in the same sector, choosing to come together under one umbrella. So for example, a hotel, right, a company that's into hospitality, that owns hotels, and a newspaper publisher. That's a conglomerate merger. They're not even in the same sector, right? So these are a few things about mergers. I think the mergers and acquisitions can be wonderful because there's a place for competition and also a place for collaboration. The process of pulling together resources, whether intellectual resources, financial resources, and so on and so forth, to come together and form one entity can be very powerful, very productive, having a multiplier effect. But of course, it has to meet with the requirements as laid down by law, especially when considering the importance of avoiding monopolies and killing competition. So, thank you so much. If your organization is considering a merger or an acquisition, which is a fantastic thing, do well to consult a lawyer who will advise you on the process and guide you and help you ensure that your I's are dotted and your T's are well crossed. I am Mela Klodake, a lawyer, always at your service, thanking you for your time watching this video. I look forward to seeing you on the next video. Do well to like the video, subscribe, and click on the notification bell. Enjoy the rest of your day and see you on the next video.